What's up, Eagles Nation? What's going on, NFL world? How you doing, division rivals? This is Steven Hyder with Gate City Sports Channel, the sports channel where the cerebral NFL fan comes for about 10 minutes of daily content. What's up, guys? If you're new to the channel, once again, my name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. If y'all could do me a huge favor, if you guys are into Philadelphia Eagles football, if you're just into really football content where you got a creator that will break down plays for you and really give you insight to the game, I got a feeling you'll like this channel. So if you could just do me a huge favor and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. All right, y'all. Today's topic. Well, this is a preview video, guys. We're going to talk about this matchup with the Washington Redskins. And before I really jump deep into the content for today, look, I'm just going to put it out there. I don't think this game is so much about Washington as it is about Philadelphia. Washington is in full-blown rebuild mode. They got an interim head coach that maybe they're checking out, and Callahan. Callahan's been a high-level head coach before. He led Oakland to a blowout performance in the Super Bowl, but he led that team to a Super Bowl. He's a pretty good administrator as a coach. He's an offensive line guy, so this is a running guy. This is a guy who likes to run the football, which is probably the best friend to a young quarterback. But with that said, this is really about the Eagles. This is about a team that was given high praise in the earlier portion of the season and told that we were supposed to be a contender. And we're fighting to salvage the season at this point. We have suffered tremendous amounts of injuries. And we're going to be going into this football game against a football team that has been playing better of late. Basically without players like Lane Johnson, our right tackle. We're going to be without all three starting wide receivers, it looks like. Alshon's out for the rest of the year. Deshaun might return before the end of the year, but more likely if we make the playoffs, we could see him back. Who knows? And listen, Nelson Aguilar's news from today was not very good, or maybe it was yesterday, where basically he gave a report and said that, he's at a stalemate. It's not a guy that seems that he's very confident about returning anytime soon. So we're rolling in there with a unknown group of receivers. Robert Davis, guy that was on Washington's football team. This is a big physical guy who has speed. He's got the physical gifts. If you go back and you look at this guy's recruiting tape and you look at the web diagram that kind of shows you the athleticism and how they measured from the testing from the combine, that guy's web was very impressive. However, this kid, as I said in some comments, and I've said in other videos, we got to caution ourselves a little bit because this kid was not a very polished route runner. He did struggle with basically getting that hip dip correct, which is basically the way you break in and out of routes as a wide receiver, basically meaning he wasn't the most agile. So he had premier top-end speed, not so much an in-and-out shifty guy. So there's a lot to be desired there. We got Greg Ward Jr., which I love Greg Ward Jr. He's definitely come on. The kid's got pretty good hands. The kid's a fairly dependable guy. He's been on the team. He's been fighting to make this football team. But if you ever see Greg Ward Jr. in person, the guy looks like a high school football player. This is not a very well-built man. This is not someone you would identify, on the street walking by him and think to yourself like, oh, wide receiver from the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, he's not built like that. He's a hell of a productive player, though. Probably our most productive player at this point going in. And then we have, of course, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, the guy we wasted. Well, I won't say wasted. That's a little rough to take there. A guy we spent a second-round draft pick on. A guy that has been very underwhelming. A guy who has tremendous talent. But he's really struggled to pick the offense up. There was clearly a reason now that we've had an opportunity to see on why he was sitting the bench. Although I will caution, he's been way more productive than Matt Collins, so I don't understand that move per se, but I do understand why the coaching staff was a little reserved on this football player now. He's not quite as polished as he should be at this point, especially since the selling point to him on the draft is that he was already supposed to be a fairly polished route runner. He's not that. He doesn't quite understand the route trees within the playbook yet, so that's a problem. He's got a lot more growing to do there. Probably would have helped if we had a legitimate, wide receiver coach this year. So, just going to say that. Look, I think this game is more about the Philadelphia Eagles than it is the Washington Redskins. And you know what? I've delayed long enough, so let's jump into what the Washington Redskins are.
And all on offense. Redskins now have three rookie wide receivers on the field.
Okay, guys. So far this season, the Washington Redskins, have been a football team that has run roughly 75% of its offensive snaps. Especially over the last 3 games, it's been exactly 75% of its offensive snaps out of 11-man personnel. With that said, even though they're following the dominant trend of the NFL of playing 3 wide receiver sets, it should be noted they are a 53-47 pass to run balanced team. It's a very balanced football team. So, true to a Bill Callahan coached football team, this is a team that will run, and it will run out of the 11-man personnel pack. Now, what should be noted here about what you see here is that this is a play design they like to use a lot. They're clearly using 3 rookies. So they got Sims Jr., they got Terry McLaurin, they got Kelvin Harmon. All these guys are pretty good. Some of you guys do not sleep on Kelvin Harmon, guys. This is a big, physical, strong receiver with very, very deadly hands. We didn't get a chance to really see him too much in that first game. I'm telling you, that's not a guy we can sleep on. He's a big body. He's going to fight with a guy like Jalen Mills pretty well. So, a little wrinkle that Callahan throws in here, guys, and you can't see, but if you look to the offensive right, there's an extra lineman added there. That's not a tight end. That's an eligible. So they're bringing in an eligible offensive lineman basically as a tight end. That situation, that's Tony Bergstrom. That's a backup guard center that they have, like a swing guard center that they have, and they'll use him a lot. It's a good way for them to basically be able to utilize the run, play action, pass. They use a little bit of everything there. So this is a wrinkle we will definitely see from them.
Along with the rookie quarterback and Haskins.
So the Redskins will go a little 21-man on you as well, which is simply it's 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 2 running back set. My bad, guys. But they approach it a little differently than the Eagles will. The Eagles will use guys that are a little more shiftier. Like we'll bring in a Boston Scott with a Miles Sanders. Number 1, because of necessity, but number 2, we need players on our offense that can stretch the field, that have that elusive to them, that have speed to them. And Miles Sanders or a Boston Scott always kind of keeps that ability on the football field for us. So Washington, on the other hand, because it has a guy at the receiving position that can absolutely fly down the field in Terry McLaurin, doesn't have to necessarily do that. So they'll do something a little different out of the 21-man. They'll go into a much bigger set. So once again, they'll check in guard center Tony Bergstrom as an eligible tight end. Basically, he'll take in as their eligible tight end. And then on top of that, they'll bring in their basically a guy they use as a lead block, almost as a fullback, which is Michael Burton, which is number 45. And they'll try to push the defensive line and pick up some yardage. They'll do some things like they'll pull guards, they'll pull tackle, they'll try to pull the line to try to get in and get those swinging guards and stuff moving. Not very successful though, but I'll show you a play, then I'll break it down in a slower feature for you so that way you can see exactly what's going on.
First and 10, 40.
I love the play design here by Bill Callahan. The execution is just horrible. Look, as bright as I think the future is for the Redskins, it's their wide receiver core. I think McLaurin, I think Sims Jr., I think that other guys on the football team like Kelvin Harmon, I think those guys are going to be a part of their future. Like they've got pieces at the wide receiving core. Depending on how they view things at their tight end position, like that's a little more questionable, but they do have a guy that if healthy he's a playmaker. Now what we get into is this issue of, do you have your future quarterback? Do you believe in Dwayne Haskins? Because if you have that, then you got a shot at the NFL. But outside of that, the next big piece that you need is an offensive line. And I'm going to tell you, the Redskins' offensive line is just horrible. It's not good. And you'll see on this one to where they pull, I think it was Sharif they pulled. 75, I think it's Sharif. I'll look it up and check. But I think they pulled Sharif with Kelvin Harmon, and both of them take a corner. Why? Why? Leave the receiver to block the corner, and you need to hit the hole and take out one of the 2 linebackers. Like, it's bad execution. Just really bad execution. I'll slow it down and show you it. Watch Sharif go for a corner that's already blocked instead of going into the hole and picking up one of these 2 linebackers. So, the offense is really going to live and die by being able to control that line of scrimmage, which I'll admit, we've had our struggles the past 2 weeks against teams that, well, I wouldn't say 2 weeks. We kind of controlled the Miami game. We probably should have run it more as we were controlling that game, but we struggled against the Giants. The Giants had a really good defensive front, and our offensive line struggled there. And then in reverse, the Giants don't have a great offensive front. And there were times where I like our pass rush, but it did have a tendency to disappear in that first half, which wasn't good. So we've got to be more consistent ourselves with applying pressure. We know we can do it, but it needs to be more consistent. Now, Haskins is missing throws. He hasn't, that young youth rawness to him to where he's still developing. His pocket presence is still really off. He doesn't see the field that well all the times. His footwork needs a lot of improvement. Like he's got a ways to go mechanically. Look how far Haskins was dipped there, then does the quarterback bounce, bounce, and then throw. You guys remember, I covered a play where Carson Wentz did the same exact thing. It's a common mistake, and I was, like I told you guys, when I was playing, I was really guilty of this myself. I was definitely a Tigger, someone that liked to bounce before I threw the football. Happens a lot of times because it's like an anxiety thing. It's a way of releasing the anxiety. However, like with Haskins, if you can see right as soon as I started that clip, guys, and I should have given you a second or two before that so you could have seen it much more drastically. But basically, before he even goes into the bounce, Haskins already has his posture way off, like he's already back. That's going to cause you to sail it. And then he goes into the bounce. He goes into the bounce, and he kind of recovers his footwork a little bit. I mean, overall, the play didn't look horrible. It was just that initial footwork and body posture was really bad. It's indicative of a young quarterback. Like young quarterbacks are going to make these kind of mistakes. Overall, I think there is a little bit of talent to Haskins. I mean, I don't know if this kid's going to develop into anything special, but I mean, he's got attributes, but he's got a lot going on with his mechanics right now. No doubt about it. His mechanics are definitely off at this point. Look at the leg placement, how far apart they were, into why he has to bounce. Although Haskins has some somewhat major fundamental issues at the in the pocket, I will warn people to pump your brakes because sometimes when you get comfortable in a game and you get into rhythm, man, those little fundamental mistakes, they go away and you get red hot and you go on a tear. So we do need to be a little cautious about that because they do have weapons around him to where if he can settle into the pocket, it's into a rhythm in the game, then all of a sudden he starts looking like a veteran and he's not making those fundamental errors. So just want to caution. We got to get the pass rush home on this kid. And we've got to mix things up in the coverage on him because he doesn't have a lot of game experience. He's going to have difficulties, diagnosing what's happening back there in the backfield. So we need to give him some stuff that'll confuse him. Hopefully that's in the wrinkles of our game plan. Watch how hard the linebackers and the safeties bite on that play action. The Redskins love to play defensively. Greg Minuski loves to play a lot of single high safety coverage, mixing up between cover 3 and cover 1. This particular play, I think they're actually in cover 3. It could technically be in cover 1. The coverage is so blown, it's hard to say. That happened quite a bit with the Giants as well. There were a few plays, even in the Giants game when I was watching it, the coverage was so bad it was almost impossible to figure out what it was supposed to be because it was that bad. This is an example. It could be cover 3, it could be cover 1. The reason I'm going with cover 3 on this, guys, is the fact that it's first down. It's likely a running play. That's probably what most of the defenses would think. You got a single back there. You got a big offensive set that's set to the short side of the field. Everything there would probably indicate to a defense it's a run. So the way you counter that is to go cover 3. Then if you just watch the way those linebackers flow, those linebackers are not worried about dropping back into they're not worried about dropping back. They're playing the run first. So they're playing the run, and then by the time they realize what's happened, their assignments have gone past them, and it's really bad. And I'll let it finish out for you. Linebackers don't fall into their zones. One of the corners isn't on his third of the field. Look at all that green. This Redskins secondary really isn't that great, guys. Even in what it likes to run, which is more of a cover 1-man press concept, it's beaten quite a bit. This is not a very good secondary. The strength of this Washington Redskins defense is it's honestly it's 3 down linemen and those 2 outside linebackers, those 2 rush ends. That's the strength of the football team. But I'll cover that in a second. Just example of a cover 1 press, and Redskins, they get burned on it. No one's there. Washington staying in its base package instead of going to some like sub like nickel's a mistake. Green Bay basically look to the offensive right. They got receivers in a stack set. They motion somebody out. They just want to see whether or not the Redskins are in cover 1 or cover 3. They're looking to see whether this is a zone or is this a man concept. As soon as number 31 follows him across the line, they know that this is a man concept. So now we just need a man beater. And they do a pretty good job of like a deep drag route that kind of gets them. So it's a pretty good route run there, and it was a pretty good play design. On that route, number 80 gets inside of the hip of number 20, and it's all over. One thing I do want to show to you is something that Greg Cosell kind of revealed in his film study of the Washington Redskins, which is something that defensive coordinator Greg Minuski loves to run. It's a diamond front. A diamond front just means when you're trying to match up each of the offensive linemen to commit itself to blocking a defensive lineman or a linebacker, or just 5 players in general, guys. I'm going to run you through and give you an idea and a look at basically what a diamond front is, why it's effective, and why the Eagles need to be very, very careful about matching up with this defensive line and making sure we don't allow things like the diamond front to ruin our offensive progression, our rhythm, our timing, all that kind of stuff.
Lions must get to the 27. Pressure on Driscoll. Down.
As you can see on that play, guys, they give you a diamond front, 5 across look. Fortunately, those 3 middle guys are going to drop back into a zone coverage, and they're going to send 4. They're going to bring an outside corner, and it looks like an outside rush linebacker basically is going to come on a blitz there. So they're only really rushing 4, but they're giving you the look they could be sending anywhere between 5 to 7 pass rushers on that particular down. It's a diamond front. That's what I'm warning the Eagles to be careful of, because that can really disrupt the timing of an offense if we become very vanilla and very predictive offensively. They're going to start running stuff like that at us. So what I want to do is I want to slow it down to you, and I'll just really point out what it is, and I'll highlight it in film and make it obvious. So that way, if you see it in the game, you know exactly what's going on. In the middle of that diamond, Montez Sweat, Kerrigan, and the linebacker are going to drop back and cover. Let's go to some of the individual play of some of those players along the Washington Redskins front 7, from the defensive ends, well, rush and linebackers, to the defensive linemen, to those linebackers, and talk for a second. Look, this Washington Redskin defensive line is very good with Jonathan Allen. He's a standout football player. Ioannidis, the kid from, I believe he came out of Temple. Very good football player. I mean, they've got talent on this defensive line. You go to the rush ends, Kerrigan, Sweat, Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat is a bit of a liability in coverage, but he's fairly good at rushing the passer. Like, there's talent. However, their inside linebackers and their corners and safety play is not good. And I've listened to a few debates to where people are saying, like, look, the Eagles' offensive weapons are so decimated, we can't put up 30 points even on a team like Washington. I disagree. I think they're discounting just how bad this secondary is. I think the problem is even if we put up 30 points, can our defense stop their offense from putting up 31? I think that's the bigger question here. I think we are very limited offensively. We're going to be scaling things down. With that said, I mean, look, I'm showing you guys, they're not very good at coverage. They blow assignments. They sell out on runs. This is not a good defensive secondary. The back 7, well, back 6, the way that they play, is not very good. It's not very good at all. And Washington's like weird reliance on staying in its 34 base package instead of going into like a nickel sub package, like especially when you're struggling with coverage. I think they can be had. And, we don't get a lot of separation from guys like Ertz and them, but they're way better at getting the body position. So I'll take them. I don't know what we're going to get out of a guy like Robert Davis. He's just being called up. I don't know how well he knows the playbook, but he's athletically gifted. He's the most gifted receiver we're probably going to put out there on the field in terms of just physical attributes. Then we get guys like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. If J.J. Arcega-Whiteside can just start being in the right place inside of the route tree, he's going to get receptions because the kid can catch. He had one bad drop against Detroit, but since then he showed that he can catch the football, and he's pretty good at coming back to the quarterback when plays break down. So I look into that. Greg Ward Jr. can get separation. He's not a fast guy, but he's a very agile guy. He's got a lot of agility. He gets in and out of his breaks very quickly. Can he hold up, though? That's the problem. Perkins. I think Perkins gives us some versatility with 3 wide receiver sets because he can act as a tight end or he can act as a receiver. That's, we're going to have to mix some things up. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Eagles attack the Redskins with 2 back sets. I think challenging them, taking a vertical route with a guy like Davis. I know he just got here, but put him vertical. Put J.J. Arcega-Whiteside vertical. Let them try to go up and make a play on these corners. And then try to challenge the perimeter, the flats, with guys like Boston Scott and Miles Sanders. I'd make these linebackers try to cover. They're not very good at it. Because if they were sitting there worrying about Davis getting deep, these 2 guys attacking the flats in Sanders and in Scott, and then you got to protect the middle of the football field from Goddard and Ertz, and Greg Ward Jr., like it can get crazy on them. They're not that good. I am concerned about this Dallas game with the lack of weapons we have. However, to me, this is more about execution against a team like Washington. This is not a very good football team overall. It's a team that's playing a lot better. It's a team that has enough weapons to beat us. I do caution people to not take them lightly. However, this team has some really big issues on the defensive side of its football, and it's got a ton of issues on its offensive line. Adrian Peterson, you can't discount him. McLaurin, that kid's he's a true stud. He's a good football player. I think him and Slayton are really good football players inside the NFC East. But you know what? We can beat this football team with what we have. We have enough weapons to beat this team. I don't really think you can look back on this game and say, like, oh, well, if we just had a little more weapons, we should have won that football game. That's not an excuse, man. We have the way better offensive line. We have the way better quarterback at this point of his career. Miles Sanders is a much more versatile running back than Adrian Peterson. Although Peterson's a great running back, there's no excuses. The only place where you can say definitively that Washington has an advantage on us is at the receiving position. That's it. Defensive line, they're very good, but we're very good in our own right. Secondary, we're not great, but we don't blow coverages. Well, we have. I don't want to say that. We blow weird coverages, like when we come to like zone assignments, to where you're supposed to cover a third of the field. Like if we're doing something like quarter halves or quarters coverage, or that's where communication gets involved. We're not good, but we don't blow coverage in as many games as Washington has, and we tend to be able to get it back together again. So I do caution people. This Washington team's playing a lot better. I do think this team might play us very tightly with a chance to win the football game on us. So we're going to have to be very careful there. However, I don't know that it's an excuse to say that you lose to this team because you don't have the weapons. That's just my opinion, guys. All right, guys, I'm going to hop off here, man. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And oh, yeah, it's time we do that thing where we go EAGLES, Eagles. Look, guys, we should beat this Washington team, but there are weapons. Hopefully this video helped break down a lot of the things I'm seeing from this Washington Redskin team. I'm just warning you guys. We talked a lot of shit about the Dolphins and the Giants. I wouldn't go into this game with such big heads against the Redskins, because I think the Redskins are playing better than all three of them right now, although I think the Dolphins have the better organizational level football team between coach, executives, direction of the football team, and some key parts, like, Devontae Parker, like a true talent. But I'm telling you, Washington ain't far behind them. They're still got a lot to do with the coaching, and they got a lot to do with the administration there. It's off in terms of the front office, but the talent on that roster is better than what people perceive it to be. All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out here.